Then you got to know something about water. Water is heaviest and densest at basically 40 degrees. It's 39.14 degrees actually. But any water colder than that is lighter by weight, which is why the ice forms only on the surface of the lake. Any water warmer than 40 degrees is lighter by weight and it floats. As you get into summer, you can get lakes that are big and deep enough that they will layer into a warm water lake, a transition lake, or warm water layer, a transition layer, and a cold water layer. The water on the surface might be 70 degrees. 4 feet down it might be 69 or 68 degrees, but that makes it a little denser, a little heavier. A light breeze will take this way and it'll skim that surface water and it'll move it over here. And the water underneath it will go back this way as it moves this water over here. You get a big blow come in. It'll blow the lake this way in the direction it hits the shoreline, and it'll stack the water in the lake. It'll stack it up on the shoreline, and it'll stack up a tremendous amount of plankton and so forth as well, because it took the surface off. Now some of that plankton gets redistributed when it hits here, but the lake will actually get out of level. And when the wind is done, the lake goes like so, and it levels itself back out, and it creates currents out there in places that you don't expect them. You can have a sunken island 8 miles off a shore, and as this thing is correcting its own level and balance, the lake does, it'll be moving water that you don't think of as moving water. This big hump out here in the middle, or this big structure out in the middle of the lake, the water doesn't just rush up to it because there's water in front of it, so it'll create currents, and it'll create and stack a current line up that'll stack the plankton up, that'll stack the fish up, and there might be an off structure. I mean, that's getting a little deep here.
Yeah.
For most guys. They don't have to get that technical. But I'm telling you this right now because they need to open their minds to understand that there are a lot of variables. Some of them are very obvious. You can see them right in front of you. And there are other things that happen that cause things to happen with the fish that people don't stop to think about.
Sure.
So they say, well, they're not biting. And I say, once in a while that's true. But most of the time you haven't found them well enough.
Yeah.
Secondly, or lastly there, feeding doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. They did a study where they took a 4-pound walleye, give them 1 ounce of minnow flesh. In 38-degree water, it took them 90 to 125 hours to digest that 1 ounce of minnow flesh. The same walleye in 70-degree water would digest it between 6.5 and 11 hours. Now that's not his appetite. It is his ability to process food. Boom, boom. They smack a couple of perch this long and now he's good for quite a while.
Yeah.
He's not going to necessarily have to go on the hunt. He's not going to be necessarily willing to chase. But it's kind of like if you and I went into a restaurant and we had this great big meal. They had prime rib night tonight. We ordered the big ones and it was too much. We were sitting there like, oh my God. If the lady over by the cash register then stood up and said, hey, we've got after dinner mints here. They're free for anybody, come and get them. You wouldn't move. I wouldn't move. But if she walked over to your table and said, sir, would you like an after dinner mint, and put it right here?
Yeah.
And you look down and they're the kind you like. And the last thing in the world you want is food, but they're right here. That's the mood that fish are in a tremendous amount of the time. And when I say hunt them, I'm not saying finding the area of the lake where there's a bunch of fish in. I'm saying that's step one. Now step two is finding the fish within that area. Step three is understanding what mood they're in today. Are they aggressive or passive? You can tell that by the way they react to the baits. If you throw a jig out and go, thump, I got an aggressive fish, maybe I'd be better off not fishing jigs anymore and throwing a bigger bait, and I might have a chance of getting bigger fish out of here because they're in a feeding mood.
Yeah.
If it goes, or just a little tiny thing, it's telling you about their moods and telling you what you should do next. You need to listen to the fish, and you need to listen to them by how they react to what you're doing. if that makes sense.
Yeah, fishing for 10 years in Canadian waters, pretty much 100 and some hours or days a year, and I learned more in that last 10-minute conversation I think I have in that whole 10 years. So that's unbelievable information.
There's a lot of stuff here, and I don't want to get too heavy.
Yeah, I get it.
And it's not that I know it all, because I certainly don't. I'm working at learning every day that I fish, and I will till the day I die.
Yeah.
And the same thing with hunting animals. You can't learn it all.